azúcar, flores y muchos colores. Estos fueron los ingredientes elegidos para crear a la niñita perfecta, pero el profesor Utonio agregó accidentalmente otro ingrediente a la fórmula.
Wild, wild honey.
Y así nacieron las chicas superpoderosas.
Greetings, loved ones. Let's take a journey.
Fanaticosos presenta
BearGirls.
Las chicas superpoderosas.
Hola, hola, buenos días o buenas tardes o buenas noches, dependiendo a la hora que ustedes nos estén escuchando. Espero que se encuentren muy bien. Este es el sexto ya episodio, Almis, de BearGirls.
Sí, creo que sí, ya vamos en el 6.
Ya, ¡ay, qué emoción! Y muchísimas gracias de verdad nuevamente a todos los que nos han apoyado, a todos los que nos han compartido, de verdad, muchísimas gracias. Hoy es un programa muy especial, vamos a platicar un poco acerca, pues precisamente de lo que se ha estado viviendo dentro de específicamente de los Bears por el tema de Justin Fields y unas declaraciones que dio previo después del partido en contra de los Packers, en donde una persona en Twitter extrajo una parte de una entrevista de Justin Fields y la anunció mencionando que todo el tema, que sí se estaba quejando de los fans, quizá es un tema pues un poquito complejo que dividió muchas opiniones en Twitter entre los fans de los Bears, pero para eso también trajimos como a un experto que nos va a estar dando un panorama totalmente diferente del asunto. Y que bueno, pues Almis, ¿cómo estás? Que esta tarde nos va a estar acompañando Heidi, que le mandamos un abrazo muy, muy grande y muchos apapachos.
Sí, un abrazo enorme a nuestra compañera Heidi. La queremos mucho y aquí la van a tener de regreso en el próximo capítulo. Yo estoy muy bien, ya estoy de regreso en California y pues muy contenta de estar hoy aquí grabando con nuestro invitado y sobre el tema del que vamos a estar platicando. Yo creo que es un tema pues que ahorita pues está muy fresco por todo el tema de Justin Fields, pero también pues se ha dado en otras situaciones con otros jugadores, entonces está padre tener como el input de alguien que se dedica a los medios para que nos pueda dar como su punto de vista, él cómo lo vive o cómo lo ve desde donde está, ¿no? ¿Tú cómo estás, Minas? ¿Bien?
Sí, todo muy bien. Gracias a Dios, por acá andamos chambeando mucho en mi chiquita ciudad Victoria. Pero bueno, también mencionarles a la gente que nos está siguiendo que esta entrevista, así como la de Joel, va a ser completamente en inglés, pero que esperemos que la vayan a disfrutar. Todavía YouTube no nos da acceso a poner subtítulos mágicamente, entonces creo que les vamos a deber nuevamente los subtítulos. Pero, Almis, ¿quieres hacer la presentación de nuestro invitado especial?
Sí.
Por favor.
Okay, so we're having today John Buffone, how do you say it? Buffone? Yeah, right?
Yes.
Yep, you got it.
I'm sorry.
No, I was nodding in the backstage. I'm like, I hope she can see me nodding. Yep, that's right.
We saw you.
So, this episode is going to be about if you can tell us more about of yourself, and as well about your opinion about all this media stuff that they do whatever they want to have more clickbaits on their, in the internet. How does this work? So we are very glad to have you here with us, joining us to our podcast. As you know, Heidi is not going to be able to join us today, but she sends you a lot of hugs, and maybe in another episode we can be again the three together with you hanging out and having an interview.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. Definitely miss talking to Heidi, but you know what? We talk all the time on Twitter and Instagram and all that other stuff, so I'm sure I'll be talking to her, but I really appreciate you guys having me on.
No, thank you for saying yes and for sharing us a little bit about your life and about your your experience on media and this topic that I don't know. It's been really confusing to see a lot of different opinion on Twitter, especially about Bear fans. Like they are, like say talking bad about Justin Fields. Another one that they are supporters of him, but like a little bit more the media side. But we want to start first with that you talk to us about your life, like where are you from. You can tell us a little bit more about you for the guys that first like they're watching us the very first time, which is your main job, your hobbies, etc.
So I've had a very, I would say, diverse career because I grew up just about an hour north of Pittsburgh. So I grew up in a big area of Steeler fans. So when I was growing up, it was all Steeler fans, and I was a Bears fan. And the Steelers were always good, and the Bears were always bad. So it was kind of difficult to live in that area. And so I went to college, and I was a major in broadcasting. And once I got out of college, I got my very first radio show on a very small radio station about an hour north of Pittsburgh. And I think it was just powerful enough that if you were standing in the parking lot, you could hear it. It was a very small radio station, but I loved it. I had my own sports show. It was just awesome because I was 22 years old and I was doing my own show, and maybe somebody was listening to it. And then I transitioned over to newspaper, and I moved out to the central part of Pennsylvania. And then I tried my hand at television reporting for a while. I did television reporting for 2 years, just doing straight news, just, whether it be, politics or, breaking news or robberies and all that fun stuff. And then went back to newspaper, and I was an outdoors reporter, hunting, fishing, hiking, all that outdoor stuff. And then I decided that I was just going to switch sides. And then I started doing government relations with media as a media specialist. And so now what I do is I work for a political association in Pennsylvania, kind of guiding people on how to interact with the media, because I was part of the media. And now I'm coaching people on how to conduct themselves in interviews, or how to get the most amount of media attention. If there's something that they think is newsworthy, how do we connect with the media to make sure that it gets out there? So for a sports fan, I guess the best way I can describe it is I changed jerseys at halftime. I went from being part of the media to being on the other side of that and dealing with the media. So I've kind of gotten the best of both worlds. And it's been a crazy career because it's only been 11 years and I've packed a lot of stuff in that 11-year career. So it's been fun.
Yeah. Amount of time.
I packed all that in basically a decade, and it's fun because I just jumped from one thing to another, and I've learned a lot throughout the way, and I have a lot of that I owe a lot of that to my uncle, but I'm sure we're gonna get into that later.
Yeah, of course we're gonna go into that later. So it was difficult for you, like to switch from sports to politics and robbery, that kind of stuff. I personally don't like that. Yeah. I just rather to stick in sports. It's kind of difficult though.
Yeah, it was not easy because when you're a sports reporter, everyone loves talking to you. But when you're a news reporter and you're at like a fire, or you're at the state capitol, or nobody wants to talk to you. Everyone hates you. And so it's funny because one of the things that we always said in the newsroom was the pay is terrible, the hours suck, but at least at the end of the day, everybody hates you. And that's kind of what we always said. It's you're doing it because you want to do it. You're certainly not doing it for people to like you. You're certainly not doing it for the pay. You're certainly not doing it because the hours are good, because none of those are true. But it was fun, and it was good to get that experience because you get to see what else is involved with news. And I was on television, which was a different thing for me. The way that you write a newspaper article is way different than the way that you write a television script. And so then you got to go out and you got to worry about your appearance. You got to wear a suit every day, even if it's 95 degrees outside. You got to have a suit on, and you're outside with a microphone. Meanwhile, I'm just pouring down sweat, and I'm like, why am I doing this? But it was.
I love my job.
Yeah, like just keep telling. I'm doing this because I love it. I do it because I love it. But it was just a fun experience, and then going back to newspaper, and then deciding to kind of switch sides and get more into the media specialist world where I can help other people leverage the media. It's been a really fun ride. There's been bumps in it, obviously, but it's been a lot of fun.
Great.
Yeah.
I bet it is fun. I love media. I work in media, so I really love, but I really sticking into sports. Yeah, definitely.
Stay there. It's much more fun. Much more fun.
Definitely.
Okay, John, did you currently practice any sport, or did you practice any in your past?
So in high school, I was a baseball player and I played basketball as well. I wanted to be able to play football, but even whenever I was a young child, I suffered a lot of injuries. And so even in baseball and basketball, I, blew out my knee a couple times, hurt my ankle more times than I can imagine, had, 4 or 5 concussions just in those sports. So I can't imagine if I would have played football, how many injuries I'd be dealing with right now. So I felt like I was a pretty good baseball player. Didn't end up playing anything in college. Just because it just didn't work out that way. Had a few, had a little bit of interest, but nothing really worked out. But now my passion, and I didn't really have an opportunity to do it when I was growing up because there weren't any of those gyms around. But when I got out of college, I really got into boxing because boxing was always my favorite sport, right up there with football. And I followed boxing. My family followed boxing. And I really started doing it seriously probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was getting ready to, start my amateur career and everything was ready to go. And then COVID hit and the world shut down. It turns out that they weren't going to have any boxing matches during 2020 and for the most part of 2021. So that kind of put the end to that. However, what it did do was it opened up a new avenue for me and I started coaching. So now I'm a boxing coach at a local boxing gym here. And it's really nice and it's really fun to, whenever the new kids come in, whether they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, they're coming in and they're just learning for the first time. And you're not just learning, how to fight. You're learning a lot of different things. You're learning self-discipline. You're learning how to push yourself. You're learning self-confidence because you feel good about yourself, that you're learning a skill. And we're all on the same team. Everyone's pushing each other to get better every single day. So even though I wasn't able to compete myself, and I'm still holding out hope that one day maybe I will, but I'm getting kind of old now. It's really
possible.
Huh?
Everything is possible, and you can do it at any age.
You're right. Boxing's a little different. It's just not that much fun to get punched in your face in your 30s, though. I'll be honest with you.
Maybe if you don't try, you will never know if you never try.
You're right. I feel like you're pushing me into this, but it is. But yeah, it's just been really rewarding to be a coach and see. And we're coaching a few guys who have having really good amateur careers so far, and just to be able to see them as new, they're beginners as kids, and then a year or two later they're in their first couple amateur fights, and you just see how much better they've gotten in a year. And it's incredible to watch that progression. So boxing is, like I said, has always been right up there with football. I follow the sport very, very closely, almost basically as closely as I follow football. I follow boxing, and so that has been also very rewarding because it's given me a way to stay around sports and be active in sports, even though I'm becoming older and older.
Great. So before we get into the, your fanatism for the bear and how do you get in touch with the bears and everything, who do you think is the greatest boxer of all time, and why Julio Cesar Chavez?
I knew you were going to say Julio Cesar Chavez, and you're probably right. However, I grew up in an Italian family where we watch all the Italian boxers. So the first name that always comes to mind is Rocky Marciano. He's the only undefeated heavyweight of all time, 49-0. I know that he fought back in the 50s, and that was like getting up on there like 80 years ago or whatever it is. So, but I agree. If I'm gonna be fair about it, it's probably Julio Cesar Chavez. But I'm always gonna go with Rocky Marciano, the Italian heavyweight, because I'm a heavyweight. I'm Italian. I'm going with Rocky Marciano. But you know what? You're probably right about Julio Cesar Chavez.
Okay, very good. So, John, your uncle used to play for the Bears, and that's the reason. That's the main reason that you became a Bears fan.
Oh yeah, because growing up in Pittsburgh, it would have been real easy to be a Steelers fan because in the 90s they were really good and they were always in like the AFC Championship game and everyone's always cheering, here we go Steelers, and they sometimes like it's okay to take off school if the Steelers are in the playoffs kind of thing. And so and I don't dislike the Steelers. Even I guess even as a child, I did root for them because back then you didn't have the internet to stream games and you didn't have NFL Sunday tickets. So the only game that I could watch were Steeler games. So I watched them every single week, and they became like my second team. And I had to, basically try to find an AM radio station that could bring in a Chicago frequency to get the Bears game, or I should say at least know what the score of the Bears game was, or I'd have to read about it in the newspaper the next day. So without my uncle played for the Chicago Bears from 1966 and then technically 1980 is when he retired. And so we grew up in a big Bears family. When you come from a very small town in Western Pennsylvania, when I say small, I know people are always like, oh, I come from a small town. This is a small coal mining town with a high school grades 7 through 12 with 500 kids, very small area, no painted roads, no stoplights, no anything. We are in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's very peaceful, but to have a professional football player come out of that town is very unlikely. And so he graduated. When he graduated high school, he went to the University of Louisville in Kentucky, and he was drafted in the 4th round by the Bears. Was also drafted in the AFL, I believe, by the Chargers, but he chose the Bears because they in the 60s they were a great team, and he was excited to go to Chicago. And then just when he got there is whenever they started, being pretty bad. But anyway, he played with some of the best players of all time. He was good friends with Dick Butkus. He played with Gale Sayers, Walter Payton. So he played with all these guys, and he has so many cool stories. One of the best stories he ever told me is back then, you weren't required to get your picture taken for a football card. So if you try to find my Uncle Doug's football cards, he only has like, out of his 15-year career, I think he only has like 6 because he never wanted to get his picture taken for his football card. So he would always tell me that him and Dick Butkus would just go hide in the locker room while the photographer was there because they never wanted to get their picture taken for their football cards. So they would wait in the corner of the locker room until the photographer left, and then they'd come out of the locker room because they just didn't want to get there. They're like, I don't want to get my picture there. The one thing about my Uncle Doug, just incredibly humble, did not play into I'm a big football player, did not want to promote himself as anything better than anybody else, so much that he hated the idea of getting his picture taken for a football card, which most people would think is really cool. Like, yeah, I want to get my pic. I would be like that. Yeah, take 1,000 pictures. Let's just keep the cards coming. I know that's how I would be, but he was not like that. He just wanted to play football. He loved playing football, and he loved talking about football, which is what he did after his career. He worked for 670 AM The Score in Chicago. He did all the Bears post-game shows for a very, very long time until he passed away in 2015. So he was the Chicago Bears. Like, he played for the Chicago Bears for 15 years, and then all those decades afterwards did the radio show for the Bears post-game shows. And if you YouTube any of his rants on the radio, they're legendary because he would just rip into the team. He would just no mercy because he loved the team so much and he wanted them to be good so badly that he would just scream when they weren't playing well. And he was just so passionate about it. And I hope, and I always say this whenever people ask me, is I hope that I can have half the passion that he had about this team, because he was so entertaining, so knowledgeable, and just energetic about football in the Chicago Bears. And I try to have that same style when I'm talking about them, because he had the same style. Maybe a little bit, but he was such a huge influence on me. And so just to kind of go a little deeper, that radio show that I was telling you about that barely anybody probably listened to because the signal wasn't strong enough. I remember I was probably a year into that show, and he gives me a call, and I always love getting calls from Uncle Doug. And he's like, how about this? He's like, how about I come on your show once a week and we talk about the NFL? Oh. And this is a guy that is doing the Bears post game show. He's doing cameos, and he's doing stuff for NFL Films at the time. Like, he has a lot of stuff on his plate, and he's going to come on my show where I think maybe 4 people were listening. And I was like, that's incredible. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. So he's like, I can give you a 15-minute segment every week. And I said, that's wonderful. Let's do it. And you know what? Every time he came on my show, he was on there for at least 30 minutes. We would just keep talking. Wow. And a lot of the times I'd forget that I had to go to break, or I'd forget that we have to do, because I was just talking to him. It felt like I was just talking to him on the phone. It was probably the best experience I ever had professionally, because I was just talking sports with my Uncle Doug, not knowing that I was getting all of this information. He wasn't just boosting my ratings. He was showing me how to conduct an entertaining radio show. He was showing me how to be entertaining, how to keep the energy up, how to be knowledgeable, how to prepare for a show. And that's invaluable. You don't realize these things until years after the fact. But how many young broadcasters would have loved that?
Mentor, right? Like, he was like your mentor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And how many young broadcasters would have died for that opportunity to have this guy on their show every week and to teach them that. And, like I said, you just don't realize how grateful you are for something until years after the fact. And doing that radio show, I was not making any money at all. I think I was clearing maybe like $150 a week, which is not, that was years and years ago, but it was not very much money. And I had to decide whether I wanted groceries or a haircut. And so it was a difficult time. And I remember having a lot of conversations with him, and he's just said, stick with it. Something's going to happen. And he is the one that kept me in the industry. I contemplated many times going back to college and finding something else to do, because it's just like, how am I going to live like this? And he kept me going. He's like, you got to stick with it. You have to stick with it. He always reassured me, you have the talent for this. Something's going to break. And without him, there's a real possibility that I probably would have quit and I would have just done something else. So I owe a lot to him, professionally, personally. He's the reason I'm a Bears fan. He's the reason I'm still in the media. He's the reason I have the style that I have whenever I do my own shows. So I owe a lot to him. And it's not just because he was a great football player. It's because he was a great person.
Nice.
Awesome. So you did like this video to him, and we're going to show for the people that is watching us. So thank you. And the guys that are listening on podcast, well, you can just listen to it. So let's put
When people ask me what my Uncle Doug was like, it's difficult to answer. Do I tell them about the big goofy uncle that came home to Pennsylvania 3 to 4 times a year? The guy who picked me up as a 1-year-old and called me Sumo? Do I tell them about the guy that always sent Chicago Bears gear home to me when I was a teenager and never acted like he was anything other than another Buffone in the basement talking about football and fishing? Or do I tell them about the guy that taught me how to be a professional radio host? A guy who had so much on his own plate, but still made time to come on my show and mentor me when I wanted to get out of the business. And he did that out of the sheer kindness of his heart. You see, you may know him as one of the best linebackers in Chicago Bears history, or you may know him as an incredible radio host. I'm fortunate enough to know him as Uncle Doug. And not a day passes that I don't think of him and what he did for me. But it's true that you don't know how fortunate you are to have someone until they're gone. I miss you.
Okay, so this is like really intense work. ¿Cómo se dice que se me puso la piel chinita, Almis?
Tengo la
Goosebumps?
Sí,
Goosebumps? Yeah, I got goosebumps.
Yeah, that was that was tough to do. That was 6 years after he 6 years after he passed away. And every, you think about it, every time it comes around, and and you, like I said in the video, it's like I wish I would have been able to say it more. But I think he knew. And so he was a really big influence on me. And so I get emotional just talking about it. But yeah, I owe a lot to him.
Oh, thank you for sharing this with us. It must be like really difficult. I mean, it's a really good job, though. You know, like in the media side,
Mm.
like journalists talking about, it's a really good job. So congratulations.
And that's why my show on the Ballroom Network is Buffone 55 right here. That was the number he wore for the Bears, and we created that show after he passed away. I needed something to do to pay tribute to him, and that was the best way I could think of to create a Chicago Bears show in his honor, and every week people know that that's a tribute to him, so they always keep his memory alive. And the one part of the show is called Buffone 55, or the B55 segment, where there's 5 questions about the Bears, and I have 55 seconds to answer each one of them. And every time I hear that, every time I see that 55, every time the audience sees that 55, they know it's because of him. And so that's the best way I could think of to keep his memory going, to keep showing him how grateful I am that he had a big impact on me.
Great, and you can watch it on Ballroom Network, though. So if you guys, the guys that are watching us or listen to us, you can go check it out on Ballroom Network.
Okay, so tell us, John, to all our listeners, at any point of your life, you thought of being a fan of any other team besides the Bears?
It would have been really easy. It would have been really easy some years, let me tell you. Yeah, sure. But like I said, when you grow up in Pittsburgh and you see the Steelers are always in the playoffs, they always have a winning record. They're always almost in the Super Bowl or in the Super Bowl, and they're always winning the division. It's like, man, that must be awesome. Like, to be honest, like every year your team's going to be competing. Like every year you have expectations of going to the playoffs or going to the Super Bowl. And that's really it. Even this year, Steelers fans have high expectations, even though they have Mitchell Trubisky as their quarterback and they don't have much offense. They're expecting to win. I know that's a name that has different emotions.
That's my MVP, my Nickelodeon
the MVP. Yeah, that's I'm sure he has that in his trophy case. But yeah, there were times where it's just like, man, it'd be so much easier to be a Steeler fan because I could still watch my team in January. So, but even though because the Bears have been done playing for 4 weeks since then, like I said, it was. I when the Steelers were on and I was with all my friends, yeah, you're hoping they do well and you're cheering for them because that's what your friends are cheering for, and you guess you want them to be happy, I guess. Yeah, it's crossed my mind a few times, but it's what, when the Bears are literally in your blood, there's no other option.
And you are from Philadelphia.
Well, I live closer to Philadelphia now. Yeah.
Like it's the Eagles or the Steelers.
Yeah, so I live. It's funny because right now I live in the central part of Pennsylvania, so there are a ton of different fans around here because I live close to Philadelphia. There are plenty of Eagles fans. There are plenty of Steelers fans here, but we're only about an hour from Baltimore, so there's a lot of Ravens fans, and we're only about 2 hours from Washington D.C. So there are plenty of Commander fans here as well. So I'm in this big melting pot of NFL fans here. Whereas if you go,
the one who was for the Bears.
Yeah, and I'm the one Bears fan out here just waving my arms like, hey, I'm here too. Yeah. And so it's like on the western part of the state, it's all Steelers. On the eastern part of the state, it's all Eagles. But when you come in the middle of the state, it's just like it could be any of those 4 teams, or the Bears if you feel like just being depressed all the time. But yeah,
I can relate. She lives in California and she's surrounded by 49ers and Raiders fans. So.
Yeah. Well, I feel like California would be full of a lot of different fans because a lot of people just move from different states to California. So there's probably a bunch of different fans out there. Plus, there's probably a bunch of like Cowboys fans out there, Chargers fans out there. I can only imagine what it's like out there.
I don't like Cowboys.
It depends on the part of the California side you live. I live in Northern California, so I'm more closer to 49ers fans.
Right.
And when Raiders were playing close to, in Oakland, we had a lot of Raiders fans. Maybe there are a ton of Raider fans, but I think the ones that I'm more closer are the 49ers.
Yeah, then I'm sure you had some bragging rights after week 1. Not too bad.
Well, I was at Chicago watching the game.
Yeah, it was in Chicago.
Nice. That's the weather wasn't so nice, but
Yeah, I know. But I was surprised, and I told the girls that I was surprised to find a lot of 49ers fans, like a lot of red jerseys on the stadium, on the streets. Like I went to a baseball game on Saturday, and I was at the game, and there were a lot of Giants fans, and there I was sitting around a lot of 49ers fans. So it was just like a little bit weird.
I think that's well, probably if they were ever going to come to a Bears game, it was going to be the first game because before it gets way too cold to come out there. And also you might be seeing some of that come true in the next few years, because if the Bears do in fact move to Arlington Heights with the new dome stadium, there are going to be a lot of fans that are going to put Soldier Field on their bucket list, because Soldier Field is a historic site, and there's going to be a lot of different fans that say I need to see a game at Soldier Field before it closes. And so you might see a lot more away fans in there as the years come closer to a new domed stadium in Arlington Heights. So that's an interesting concept, that there could be a lot more away fans coming in just so they get one experience at Soldier Field.
Inside the stadium, yeah, for sure.
So, John, tell us, until now, which is the best memory that you have as a Bear fan?
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a lot to choose from. I wasn't alive in 1985, so I didn't get to see the Super Bowl team. I didn't get to do the Super Bowl shuffle. So honestly, it's going to have to be the 2006 Super Bowl team. They went to the Super Bowl and lost, just because that was an incredibly fun team to watch. The defense was so good with Peanut Tillman and Brian Urlacher, and I think they had Olawale Ogunleye there, and Lance Briggs and Nathan Basher, and it was just a fun defense, because I've never felt more comfortable with the defense on the field than I did back then, because quite frankly, I thought the defense had a better chance of scoring than the offense did. And so whenever the defense was on the field, I was like, man, I cannot wait to see what they're going to do. They're going to create a turnover. Are they going to score? And you know what even the most exciting part is? Even if they got a 3 and out and they forced a punt, that's the year Devin Hester was a rookie. So you always knew that Devin Hester had a chance to take the punt return to the house. He was their best offensive weapon, was Devin Hester on kickoff returns or punt returns. And so not only was the defense fun to watch, but you knew if they did their job, which they probably were, Devin Hester was going to get a chance to touch the ball, and it was going to be electricity. Hell, he ran the first kickoff back in the Super Bowl. I remember I was a freshman in college, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh my God, the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl. And well, obviously they didn't, but I don't think I've ever had that feeling since in my life, because they haven't. 2018 was fun, and they had a great defense, but they didn't win any playoff games. So it has to be that team that went to the Super Bowl, because that defense was incredible. Devin Hester was incredible. The offense, well, we all know how that works in Chicago. It wasn't all that great, but the defense carried it. But it was just an incredibly fun team to watch. And I honestly, when I saw that there was going to be a ton of rain during that Super Bowl, which there was, I said, this is perfect. This is amazing for the Bears. They're going to play great defense. They're going to run the ball with Thomas Jones. They're going to win the Super Bowl. And, Rex Grossman had a way of just screwing things up sometimes. So that's unfortunate. I was very upset after that Super Bowl loss, because you never know when you're going to get back, and they haven't been back since then. And so that was hard. Yeah, it's been pretty tough since then. They did get to an NFC Championship game. That was the Jay Cutler hurt his knee and Caleb Haney came in game, but none of those teams really made me as confident as the one in 2006. And even that team didn't win the Super Bowl. So that should tell you what it's like to be a Bears fan.
Yeah, to be a Bears fan is really tough. It's not for everyone.
It takes a lot of mental strength, and just being able to be like, you know what, they're not going to be that great, but they're my team. That's just how it works.
Well, at least you are like, what to expect, right?
I'm realistic about it. I think that, but here's the thing about that though. I was fully realistic about this team this year, knowing they're not going to go to the playoffs. They're not going to win the division. They might not even win, 6 or 7 games this year. Those were my realistic expectations. But it's crazy because I didn't at the beginning of the year, I never expected them to go to Green Bay and beat the Packers. But you know what? The second they lost, I was furious. I was like, I can't believe it. I'm so angry. They lost again. Meanwhile, like a week before that, I'm like, they're probably going to lose. Yeah, they're not as talented. They're going to do. And then when it happens, I'm still angry. So it's like we can have all of those expectations for the Bears, understanding they're not going to be great this year. Next year, we might have high expectations for them because they have all of that cap space. They have all that flexibility. They might be a pretty good team next year.
Might.
Yeah, I'm always throwing that quick caveat in. They might be. But this year we don't expect much from them this year. But when they lose and it's Sunday afternoon, you're still really angry. It's like, so,
I was really angry.
Yeah, and the worst part is I live on the East Coast, so that game wasn't done until 11:30 at night for me, and then I have to do a post-game show until like 1 a.m. I'm like, it's not even worth it because they got their butts kicked. What am I doing here? So it's
not even worth it because Aaron Rodgers still owns us.
He still owns the Bears, and I didn't get any sleep. So not only does Aaron Rodgers owns the Bears, I had to get up at 5 o'clock the next morning, and it wasn't even worth it because the Bears got their butts kicked.
But I think what it hurts more is losing against Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
just once. I want the Bears to beat the Packers when they're not supposed to. Everyone, just because the Bears are always the underdogs, and Aaron Rodgers has a flawless record against the Bears. I'm like, just once, can we get lucky? Can we stumble over a win somehow? Can we somehow fall backwards into beating the Packers in Lambeau on primetime? Because I hate primetime. I hate when the Bears are in primetime. I hate it. Because not just because it's late, but because most of the time, my friends who all live in Pittsburgh, they don't pay much attention to the Bears, so it's fine. They don't don't watch them. Don't watch them. Don't. And so, but when they're the primetime game, they're watching them, and I'm getting texts, and I'm getting my group chats, and I'm getting different messages saying, "This is the team you root for." Yeah.
I get that all the time. Like this Sunday, my friends, I went to my friend's house. He's a Packer fan. So, and oh my God, I couldn't just, take him. Like, he was just, I told you they were not going to win, and Aaron Rodgers is the best, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, whatever.
If the Bears didn't play in Chicago, they would never be on primetime, because the reason they get all these primetime games is because it's a very huge media market, and they know people are going to tune in, and they know people are going to tune into Bears and Packers, because most of the time they only put good teams in primetime, or at least teams that are supposed to be somewhat good in primetime. If the Bears played in Jacksonville, they'd never be on Sunday night, or they'd never be on Monday night unless they were good. I don't want the Bears to play in primetime unless they're good, because it's embarrassing. And there's been plenty of times. Now, they didn't get embarrassed in the last game, but there have been plenty of primetime Bears games where they are just outright embarrassed. And then I have to go explain to my friends who are just like, this is what you watch every week? I'm like, yeah, that's what I have to watch every week. Yeah.
And I like it. And I
keep coming back.
I enjoy suffering.
Yeah, it's unhealthy. I understand that, but it's what I have to do.
Yeah, but my mental health is worse. So.
I just want them to be good. That's all I want. Just be good. And that's the thing about the Bears is they put together like one good team every 5 or 6 years, and then they're not good after that. We saw that with like the NFC Championship game where they lost to the Packers, and then they just fell off the map after that. We saw them in 2018. They won the division. They lose the double doink game, and then they fall off the map after that. They can't put back-to-back years together where they're consistently good. I think it's something like in the last 30 years or 35 years, the Bears have only made consecutive playoffs in like 3 times. They've only gone to back-to-back playoffs, I think, like 3 times in the last 3 decades. They just can't put consistently good teams together. And I guess if you want to count the year they got that new 7 seed with Matt Nagy, where they got their butts kicked by the Saints, and that's the game that I think Trubisky won the MVP. But like That was a newly created playoff spot that the Bears fell ass backwards into. And they're like, oh, we made the playoffs. Like, no, you lost, but so did the Cardinals. So by default, we get the seventh playoff spot, which if this would have been any other year in history, the Bears wouldn't have made the playoffs. But they got this brand new extra 7 seed just so we can watch them get annihilated in a playoff game. So they can't ever just be consistent. And is that maybe because they've never gotten the quarterback position right? Probably. It's hard to be a stable franchise if you don't have a stable quarterback. And we're hoping that Justin Fields turns into that stable quarterback where they can have consistent success. But if you look at some of the great Bears teams, it's because the defense has always been amazing. It's the team that went to the Super Bowl. The defense was amazing. The 2018 team, the defense was amazing. But that's not always sustainable because guys get hurt, guys leave. Khalil Mack gets hurt. Akeem Hicks gets hurt. Some of the people in secondary get banged up. It's hard to build a consistent winner in 2022 if you're just going to be defense and that's it. And that's what the Bears have always been about. Let the defense take care. Let the defense hold the other team to 10 points, and let's hope that we can score 11. That's basically what it is.
No, yeah, but if you keep putting your defense on the field, they're going to get tired.
That's the thing. All those 3 and outs. Yeah. If you're marching the defense out every 3 minutes, then someone's going to get tired or someone's going to get hurt. And so we were hoping that, Matt Nagy would be that guy that could revolutionize the offense. And all that really did was show that we can run end arounds on 3rd and 1, but that's neither here nor there. But I promised myself I wouldn't bring his name up anymore, but it's very difficult not to. I've never been so disappointed in it. Like after 2018, I was like, oh my God, they found it. They figured it out. They got a great defense. Trubisky's going to take another step forward in this offense. I'm like, oh my God, I think they did it.
Trubisky. I feel bad about him.
Well, you get to watch him on Thursday night with the Steelers. So
my MVP, my forever MVP.
My MVP.
So, John, talking about Justin Fields and the current situation he got involved into with this media stuff and everything. So we would like to talk about it a little bit more. So, as an expert in media, do you think that the news got better or worse with the internet?
Whew. That's a loaded question. I would say I don't want to say better or worse, but I will say that it expanded a lot because now let's look at the pro side of it. It has globalized media. Without the internet or the advancement of social media, we don't have as much content as we do right now. Quite frankly, I'm not talking to you women without the invention of the internet or the social media, because how would we have ever met? I mean, it just would not have happened. So it's done a great job at globalizing that and bringing more content and more viewpoints in and giving more people a platform to put their content out there. What it has also done is kind of given everyone their own media outlet now. So it's not just newspapers and TV stations, but it's everybody has a website, everybody has a blog, everybody has a podcast, everybody has everything now. And so it has just saturated the market. And what it has done is it has made this rat race for everyone has to be first, or everyone has to have an opinion that no one else has, because you're competing with so many different websites, so many different blogs, so many different podcasts. You have to stand out somehow because there's just so many of them now. And so it used to be you wanted the stats of the Bears game, you got them in the newspaper the next day. You wanted to see highlights from the Bears game, you watched it on your local news at 5:00. And that's kind of what you did to get your news. Now it's instantaneous. With Twitter, you have stats the second they happen. With the advancement of the internet, you literally have that information at your fingertips. So the way that you have to get viewers and listeners is to craft things uniquely. And by that, sometimes you get some of these clickbait things. And I mean, the clickbait idea has been around well before the internet came around. You know, those tabloids that you get at the cash register in a grocery store talks about, you know, a woman gives birth to a bat. There's always been those crazy tabloids that have been trying to get people to be like, what? I need to see this. And so they and so they have the old tabloids there. So the idea of this now is, and it's not just sports, it's across the board with, you know, like TMZ and all of these, you know, everyone has like these, you know, the gossip columns, and even reality TV that people refer to as like, you know, trash TV. People are watching. There's no garbage TV, or like there's no content to it. You're not taking anything out of it. It's just mindless entertainment. And so when you see some of these things happen, yes, people are going to latch on to small things and try to blow them up because they know that they need to stand out. They need to be the one that somehow breaks the news or has a hot take on something, or they're the ones that stand up, because you can't just do straight reporting anymore, because everyone does it, and everyone does it instantaneously with a snap of a finger. So you have to find different ways to have your outlet stand out. And there's still obviously room for very good journalism, very good stories, deep dives, interviews, and long pieces that you can put together that you work on for days or perhaps even weeks. But in the meantime, you got to fill space, and you're finding anything you can. It's like, oh my God, Justin Fields ate a cheeseburger on Tuesday. What does this mean for the Bears offense? And it's like, and so there's gonna be some of those sites, and it's never gonna get. You can't put it back in the can once it comes out. So this is kind of what we're dealing with, and the advancement of social media and the advancement of streaming and social media and all this other stuff. It's going to be like this, where they're going to find tiny little things, and athletes need to find a way to tune that out.
So talking about more about the athletes, on the athlete side, do you think that misleading news can affect an athlete's performance and their career?
If they let it. I'm not a professional athlete, so I don't want to speak for them, but I will say that it's possible. I think social media is a great tool for athletes. We see what Tom Brady does on social media, and it's fantastic. And he's able to push his brand on there, and he's able to make money on it, and he's able to make funny, you know, memes and funny things, and people love what he puts out there. And I think that he probably has a team that helps him with that. So I would say that social media is a great way to push your brand. It's not a tool to figure out what people are saying about you, because you'll go insane. Because fans now have an outlet to boo you from across the world. They have the Twitter. You can, if you have fans in Europe or Mexico or Canada or wherever, they can at you anytime on Twitter and say something rude to you. Unlike in years past, before Twitter and social media, they would just scream at their TV. Now they pick up their phone and they try to send you a DM. So I think that there's a good way for them to use social media and to push their brand, push their popularity, and capitalize and monetize that. But also, I think it's important that they turn off any function where they can see what their mentions are, because it's not going to do you any good to see what people are saying about you, because some guy with 2 followers in Saskatchewan, Canada, said that you can't throw the ball. That unless you're the kind of person that absolutely needs that motivation, where people are saying things about you, which I'm not that person. Maybe some people are, where they have to see the negative said about them to really turn that into fuel. It's probably best just to turn off any function where you can see where people are mentioning you. Don't even interact with people on there. Simply use it as a vehicle to push your brand, push your message, push what it is that you want to push out, push your endorsements, push your ads. It can all go on there, and you don't have to look at what anybody else is saying about you.
Sure. So talking about that, I have learned that I rather, like to have this full article and well done than just to put, like a news like really fast. Like I think that's pointless, like and you as a media, especially media, how can we help to do better articles and less clickbaits? Do you think that this is worth it, or do you think that this is going like full clickbait, full clickbaits in the future?
I don't think it's going anywhere. So I think that comes down to the individual now. The individual can say, I'm going to write in-depth articles that give people great stories and give them a better understanding of the people they follow in sports. And I think that's incredibly noble to do. And there's definitely a space for that. People still like in-depth articles and to learn things that they didn't know beforehand. But like I said before, there are going to be outlets, and if they found a groove, they found their groove where they're going to put that quick hitting cheap stuff up there because people are consuming it, and people like to get into Twitter arguments about stuff. How many people did we see arguing about the Justin Fields comment? That was a full-blown media firestorm for a couple days, and some of those videos got thousands upon thousands of views. Some of those articles probably got thousands and thousands of clicks. So as long as those clicks are up for the taking, there are going to be outlets that capitalize on that. So I don't think that there's ever any going back on that. I think it's very much up to the individual media member. It's up to the individual outlet on how they're going to conduct themselves. And I think what you're seeing with most outlets now is there's a balance of both, where there's maybe there's a reporter or a person that just jumps on the immediate news. They just jump on that quick hitting stuff to try to generate some traffic to the website or generate some traffic to the podcast. And then you have another person whose job it is to really do that long form journalism where you're doing 2 to 3 interviews and you're telling a really great story. I think right now I think outlets are trying to strike a balance, but you're never, with the way that outlets are now, where the media is right now, the way that everyone is vying for clicks, everyone is trying to get whatever they can, as much traffic to their site, because that's what draws in advertisers, that's what draws in sponsors. When you said, hey, our site or our podcast got 10,000 listens last week, they don't really, unless you're being like very vulgar, they don't care what you're talking about. Oh, you have 10,000 listeners, we'll sponsor your show. Or you got 100,000 clicks last week. Oh, we'll sponsor your website. And so when that's a possibility, when you can monetize that, it's hard to say that people are just going to take the moral high ground and say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. That's not human nature.
That's right. So, John, thank you so much for for being here with us, and just stop by and give us a little bit of your time. So, tell us where we can find you. When is your show going, and where we can find it.
Excellent. I appreciate you guys having me on. You can follow me on Twitter at JD Buffone. Yes, that D does stand for Doug. Douglas is a family name, and I was lucky enough to have my uncle's name as my middle name. And then on the Barroom Network, Buffone 55 airs every Wednesday at 7 Central, 8 Eastern. And then as soon as the Bears game is over, no matter what time that Bears game is at, we do the post-game show. It's called Bear Football. Me, Danny Shimon, and Tyler Ellis, where we do a very raw, emotional post-game show. And the coolest part about that is my uncle always did the post-game show for the Bears. And so the fact that I get to do a post-game show for the Bears is incredible to me. Like I said, if I can have an ounce of the passion that he has, then I know that I'm doing a good job. So at the second that scoreboard hits 0, we go live and we start talking about the Bears game. Win, lose, or draw, we're either really happy, really mad, but we're certainly loud.
Really drunk? No?
No, me personally, no. The rest of the guys, I can't speak for them. I can't speak for them. But it may surprise you that I don't yell very much during Bears games. And it's like I yell on my show, but I when the game's going on, I think it's just I internalize all of that. I'm sitting there and I just have my hand on my chin. And I'm just like, I can't believe they're screwing this up again. I can't believe it. So maybe like 1 or 2 times now when when they went for it on 4th and goal and I saw Justin Fields in the shotgun formation, I screamed at the TV. I'm like, what are you doing? And they, I mean, I think that he did cross the goal line. I think that was a touchdown, but they ran the ball down the Packers' throat the entire length of the field. And then you have to gain 1 inch to score a touchdown and you back up 5 yards into shotgun. Like, what are you doing? And so that was one of the few times I yelled. I was in my basement by myself and I yelled at the TV. And I'm like, well, I'm sure they heard me. But I try to internalize all of that anger. So I know that I'm going on the air as soon as the game's over. So just save that anger and let it explode once the lights are on. So as soon as the Bears game is over, we go live, whether it's the Barroom Network YouTube channel, the Twitter feed, our Facebook feed. You can find it on any of that, and then you can interact with me on social media. It's not exactly I wouldn't call myself a must follow, but I do get snarky during Bears games. So I always welcome anyone to follow me at JD Buffone on Twitter. And thanks again for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
No, thanks to you, John. Almis, something else you can add before we close?
Thank you for coming and visiting us in our podcast. Like, I'm always surprised about all the knowledge that people has about like the Bears, the football, the sports, like everything. So for me, always it's just like a pleasure to listen everybody.
It's my pleasure. It's always therapeutic for me to talk about the Bears. I could if someone said, "Hey, we have to fill a 6-hour show to talk about the Bears," sign me up because I can just keep going and going.
And I can feel your passion for the Bears. Like,
yes.
Even though I'm on the other side of the country, I can feel your.
No, I always say on my show, the Chicago Bears winning the Super Bowl is the most important thing sports-wise to me in my life. Now, there are things that are much bigger than football, but but as far as the sports world goes, I have a lot of rooting interests. I love baseball, basketball, hockey. Obviously, I love boxing. First and foremost, it's the Bears winning the Super Bowl. I have to see it. I have to see it before I die. And you know, it's. I know that sounds crazy, but there are franchises that have never won a Super Bowl, and it's been around for a long time. The Browns have never been to a Super Bowl. The Lions have never been to a Super Bowl. And it's been almost 40 years since the Bears won a Super Bowl. And if it takes 40 more years, I'm going to be in my late 70s. So, or early 70s. How old am I? Or I'll be in my mid 70s. And so I have to see it. And I don't want to be, in my last years when it happens, because this is the thing about football. We only get so many shots at it. And I know it's always like, wait till next year and wait till next year. You know what? You only get so many seasons. You only get so many years to watch football. And in my 34 years of existence, the Bears have never won a Super Bowl, and they've only been to one. And there are football fans who have been fans of teams for 50, 60 years and have never seen their team win a Super Bowl. That is scary to me. Something that I invest so much emotion into. I invest so much of myself into this sport and rooting for the Bears. It's scary to me that there's an actual possibility that I could never see them win a Super Bowl. So every year is precious. Every game is precious because we don't know how many more seasons we have. So it's
I feel bad.
Yeah. I'm glad I could leave you on a very happy note. I'm glad that
I watched football in 2012.
Yeah.
So I will easily could be rooting for Patriots or Seahawks, but no, I choose the Bears.
What happened? Oh man, you're cursed. you could have picked anybody. You literally could have picked anyone. We're talking the Chicago Bears. I have to root for them. I have a bloodline into the team. I have to root for them. That's even worse. You chose this life. Like, what are you doing? Like,
doesn't like suffering.
Yeah, like how can I be miserable for the next 40 years? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to root for the Chicago Bears.
That's exactly what I thought,
Yes. How can I put myself in the worst mood possible? I'm going to start rooting for the Bears. and
well, at least you have the Cubs, Chicago.
Here's the thing about this though. I'm rooting for the one Chicago team that doesn't win anything because I'm from Pittsburgh. So outside of the Bears, I'm a Pittsburgh fan for everything else. I root for the Pirates, who are terrible. I root for now the Penguins in the NHL and hockey. They're pretty good, so they're my saving grace. I get to watch the Penguins. They're a good team. I've got to see 3 Stanley Cups in my lifetime. Well, technically 5, even though like 1991 I probably couldn't even talk yet. But that's when they won. And then so I have the Pirates and the Penguins. But other than that, like the Penguins are the only team that I've seen that have really won a championship for me. I do root for the University of Louisville because that's where my uncle did go to college and played football there. So I do root for them in both college basketball and college football. But it's rough out there, man. I tell you what, there's just not a lot of happiness. The Pirates, I think, have made, since I've really started watching football or baseball, they've made the playoffs like twice or maybe 3 times. Like they've never really been a good team. They had 20 straight losing seasons or something like that. So it's a rough life. I can see why I'm drawn to boxing because I don't really cheer for anyone. I just cheer for a good fight. And so I don't have, because then my heart won't get broken in that way. And actually, my favorite fighter is Gennady Golovkin, who just lost to Canelo Alvarez. So that worked out really well too. So even the one,
good fight, though.
No, they waited too long. Golovkin's 40 years old. He's lost a step. They moved up a weight class. Canelo has a hand injury that he needs surgery on, so he's probably not going to fight again until next spring. So yeah, the one guy that I do root for lost. So that just keeps everything going in my life as a sports fan. I don't know. In a past life, I must have won like 6 Super Bowls. I think, I honestly, like in my last life, I must have been cheering. Every team that I cheered for must have won a championship every year because it's just evening out now. But it's fun. I can't imagine I always think about people who don't like sports, what do they do? Like, what do they do in their spare time? Like, I don't like, what you like, just go for walks? Like, what? I don't understand. Like, I honestly don't know what people who don't like sports do. And I'm not disparaging that.
Who doesn't like sports. I do know people that they are like anti-sports. And I'm like, okay, what do you do all day?
And I'm sure they have hobbies. I'm sure they have interests. And I'm not disparaging any of that. It's just like, I actually can't figure out what I would do if sports weren't around. Like in 2020, whenever the world shut down and there were like no sports, I was lost. I was like, I guess I read books about sports. That's basically what I did. And so I can't imagine my whole life and just like, okay, today I don't know. I have nothing. There's no sports. I'll watch sports every single day of my life. I'll talk about sports and football and boxing in particular, but it's a lifestyle, I guess.
And it's a good lifestyle.
You're
so
right.
Thank you so much again, John, for being with us. And I hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Absolutely. I'll come back anytime.
Thank you. Y muchas gracias a toda la gente que nos estuvo viendo. Compartan el video, ya saben. Armis, ¿dónde te podemos encontrar a ti en Twitter?
En Twitter como @ALMIISS. Almiis.
Almis. Muy bien. A mí me pueden encontrar como Nasle Briones, así estoy en Twitter, y también podemos cotorrear, platicar un poco por Instagram. También me pueden encontrar como @Nasle Briones. Compartan el episodio. Muchísimas gracias por el apoyo. Nos vemos en el siguiente episodio de BearGirls. Un saludo muy grande y un abrazo a Heidi. Te queremos mucho y esperamos verte en el próximo episodio. Hasta la próxima y Bear Down.
Bear down.